It was like a
Right.
25
There you
minute
go.
meeting.
Really?
Yeah.
What are you trying
Okay,
to say? I talk too much.
is this it? Do we have anything from anybody?
I didn't.
So,
Jefferson's online. You
Okay.
can see there. And someone missing, Kent.
Nope.
okay. So we'll call to order the meeting for Thursday, May 7th, 2026. Roll call.
Chuck Howard,
Present.
Kent Slaymaker, Katie Maxwell.
Here.
Alternate Jefferson Litch,
Here.
alternate Judy Murphy,
Here.
Vice Chair Ursula Kruzaleki.
Here.
Chair Cindy Olson.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, approval of the agenda. Need a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
No, the agenda.
Oh, sorry, the agenda.
A second. All those in favor, yes? Signify by saying yes.
Yes.
No, motion carries. Okay, public comment. Do we have anybody, nobody in the audience, anybody online?
Nope.
Okay, any conflicts of interest with the agenda? No conflicts of interest. Approval of the minutes for March 5th, 2026. Need a motion and a second.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of March 5th, 2026.
I'll second.
Okay, and then there was a correction on under this applicant. New business staff applicant, about 4 lines down. They are interested. Do you see it? In maybe a spa, there's the number 4.
It's the fingernails. I'll get it out of there. They are interested. It is.
It's interested in maybe a spa instead of I. Yeah, that was the only correction I thought.
I think I saw one too. Let me see if I can find it. Where it says lot zone residential. I think it says commercial, it should be residential.
Would be zoned commercial,
Yeah, I think
as
Judy
they are
asked,
all zoned as they're all zoned residential, I see what
Right.
you're saying.
because she said no, they are all commercial.
Well, it would either be. Well, what was the zoning on that property?
They're commercial.
Okay, so then advise they would, as they are all zoned commercial, it should say, right? Not would not.
They would, as they are all zoned.
I think,
Did she ask if they would be residential?
No, she
I-
asked if they were.
no, I
if they
think
would
the
be zoned
question
commercial.
that she asked was if it was gonna be residential.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. But she said no, they're all
Oh,
commercial.
yeah,
Got
it
it.
was basically like, hey, could
Okay.
it be single family
Gotcha.
housing in the future?
Yeah.
And Rachel was like, no, because they're all commercial, it
Yeah.
would need to be rezoned,
Okay.
Gotcha.
but it could have multi.
Okay, any other corrections? All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, staff update.
Don't have any huge updates tonight. We will have Thursday meeting one more month, June 4th. Then after that, I think we can just go back to first Wednesday of the month unless people want it to be a different day.
Doesn't matter to me.
Wednesday's fine.
Yeah, Wednesday works better for me than Thursdays.
Does it?
Yeah. Those will hit.
Okay, so go back to the Wednesdays then.
Yeah, starting the July meeting, which would be July first. Which, does anyone thinking ahead, I will probably have a meeting that month. Is there any issues with the July 1st meeting with the holiday?
Nope.
I think currently okay, but I think we'll probably have a meeting that month, so.
Idaho Springs is fun on the 4th of July. Why would you go anywhere? Are we gonna have fireworks?
No.
Friday.
No?
No, it's for sure, for sure.
Oh.
It will be something, right? But it won't be fireworks.
Yeah, I haven't heard what it will be. I've heard there will be something, and then I assume as long as the fire ban's not through November, that in our contract with the fireworks company, that we can change it with enough notice to do the Saturday after Thanksgiving,
For
which
the
we've done a couple of times, I
Christmas tree
think.
lighting
Yeah.
thing?
Is there an option to also have the option to do it New Year's Eve?
I do not know that.
No, wait, I think.
Huh. That's the point.
That's worth us looking into as a potential alternative because presumably there should not be a fire ban in December
Right.
31st, not on board, but.
I'll ask about that.
Kind of staff updates, is there more?
No, we can, one of our work session items is the comprehensive plan, so we'll just talk about next steps for that during that section, and, so unless anyone has questions for staff, good to proceed.
And then the things we talked about, none of them are on the agenda.
Yeah, well, here's a staff update. We may have a very busy June meeting. But I was expecting a very busy May meeting, but then because there's quite a lot under review at the moment, but there's like 3 applications that did not kind of get everything together ahead of the deadline. And so they're getting pushed and it'll probably be June. So we'll probably have at least 3 regular meeting items in June.
What day is the June meeting? It's the first, when, or first, so it'd be the fourth,
June
okay.
4th.
It's not- Okay.
Yeah, I was
No problem.
expecting like 4 regular meeting items on this meeting, but 3 of them just aren't quite ready. So this might be a quicker meeting tonight.
Okay, resolution 2.
Want me to just dive right in?
Sure.
Okay, so this new business item is a request to annex and zone properties acquired as part of the land exchange that was up on the ballot and was approved in the November 2024 election. So basically it's 23.36 acres and it's like 4 different parcels that city acquired with the intent of adding them to Virginia Canyon Mountain Park. And then 23.36 acres for the mountain park. Eventually, as part of the agreement, were to go back to that property owner. This only deals with the lands we're receiving. And so the goal of this annexation and zoning is to bring them into the mountain park. The idea behind it is that we're basically the boundary of the mountain park would follow Gilson Gulch. Right now, or prior to the land exchange, part of the mountain park was east of the gulch and part of the private landowner was west of the gulch. And so it created some interesting boundary issues for private property and the like. So they approached us and said, we'd like to do this land exchange. It went to a vote of the people because it's a parks land and it got approved. So annexation is not really issue here, I would say, because the city now owns the property. We have the deeds, and in order to annex properties that the city owns, we just do a simple ordinance, no public hearing or anything needed. The zoning needs a specific recommendation from the planning commission. And so we're just kind of combining them together into this proposed resolution. The proposed zoning, once annexed, would be to just add it into the Virginia Canyon Mountain Park plan development, which at the top and bottom has various uses that are allowed beyond parks and recreation, but the portion of these lands would just be basically parks and rec zoning. And so you could build trails or other recreation opportunities. It could just be open space forever. There's no plans right now for these lands to be acquired.
But there won't be any homes on that.
No, it would go into this zone 3 or area 3 of the mountain park. And it's very steep terrain that we're receiving. So truly I don't think you could really build homes either way, but they'd be the parks and recreation uses only. The top and the bottom of the mountain park, which isn't really relevant to this, they could have potentially some homes and other uses and things. But, so staff believes that this application meets the requirements to justify the zoning of land development. My staff report speaks to each of these criteria. And, we believe that it meets the criteria for zoning. And so with that, I can get into any of those in more detail if you like, but, because we think it meets all that and it's just parks and recreation land being brought in, we sort of recommend that planning commission approve this planning commission resolution number 2, series 2026, which then would recommend that city council also approve this. And if we approve it tonight, it'll have first reading next week for an ordinance with council and then public hearing with council in June.
So it's just zoning it the same as the mountain
The
park,
rest of the park,
Yep. which
And
makes
they
sense.
all connect to the park, so it basically just develops it.
Okay. Any questions, or do we have a motion in a second?
I just had a quick question, Dylan. And this is about, so Gilson Gulch, that is a road there right now, right?
Well, it's where that gate is with that access that goes up the gulch. Yeah. That is, an access road, driveway, whatever you want to call it, that's owned by the Young Ranch, which is the adjacent property owner to the east. So what this land exchange does is essentially make that roadway the dividing line of the park versus the private landowner to the east.
All right, cool. Is there a potential that would be like an access road for the park in the future?
So the city did work out an access easement with that property owner separately to this for emergency services and potential maintenance. It's pretty clear right now that it can't be like public access the way it's written, but it would be if there's like emergency services has to get up there or fire or something like that, that they can use that trail and have a lockbox sort of thing.
Got it. I just, definitely like I literally live right across from this access. And so yeah, I definitely had people ask about access up there, and I'm like, well, that it did get annexed, but not sure what the rest of the plans are for that section. Because to my understanding, at least, that entire if anyone's been down here and seen it, that entire like concrete pad and that driveway that's been established there, that's all now with the city's jurisdiction, correct?
The concrete pad that has a bunch of like art, if you will, on it would be in
Does it?
city limits, yes. But the gate is not, basically.
Can I ask, what do you mean by art?
Oh, it's just,
Graffiti?
uh, it's like just this stuff painted on the
Oh,
concrete,
graffiti
like,
like stuff.
I don't know,
Okay.
American flags and an eagle
Okay.
and stuff. I haven't been by that. Well, I've been by it recently. I haven't looked at it closely.
It's very much, sorry to interject, it's very much an eyesore for everyone that lives in this area. That's just kind of like, I know it has nothing to do with the zoning in question right now, but just as a pure curiosity about when, residents along Riverside here could expect that there would be some improvement to that particular interesting section there.
That
To the art.
is something
There's other
that
stuff.
it's been brought up to code enforcement, but if you've been in that area, it probably is worth a discussion with code enforcement.
Have you seen
Yeah, we take the trail off. and
But yeah, there's no necessarily plans for improvements in that area more broadly, other than, cleaning it up would be great. I do know in the like mountain park master planning that was done back 7 years ago now, there was some feasibility done of potentially being able to build trails in that area. And I think there's interest on city council of getting some more hiking specific trails. And so maybe that's an opportunity to connect the neighborhood with some more trails. But I definitely don't think the goal would be to increase traffic in that area, whether it be cars or bikes or that sort of thing.
Okay,
And we
thank
should
you.
talk about that other issue separately because it is worth discussions.
Yeah, and I guess it does tie back into the zoning. So by moving forward with this zoning request, then it would become part of the park's responsibility for just maintenance and things like that. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah, it would be, well, I mean, I suppose the annexation brings it into the city as opposed, like that, all of the parcels into the city limits, whereas previously that section was all just county jurisdiction. And so, yeah, so yeah, and then if we make it Parks and Recreation, then it's just even further, whether it was parks or whether it was commercial or industrial, it would still be the city's responsibility as city-owned land.
So it could help. They are cleaned up.
Right. Yeah, I need to go out there and like find the pin, because I don't know exactly where the pin is, for the survey, but I should, I can find that pretty easily. Worth figuring out exactly where that is, to sort of have that conversation in a little more detail with Ed and Ian and the like.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you. And I suppose I should probably at this time remove myself from voting on this if I'm being counted in the votes tonight, just because it is directly across from me. So I don't want to have any conflict of interest here at this point.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not really a conflict of interest unless you feel that you can't render a fair and impartial vote on the topic.
I definitely feel I can, but if there's any opposition to that, let me know.
No, then you're, as long as you feel like you can render a fair and impartial decision, you're good to go.
All right.
Okay, with that, do we have a motion to recommend to city council for the zoning of Virginia Canyon Mountain Park? And there's a motion on the page here.
I recommend that the planning commission approve the planning commission resolution number 2, series 2026, concerning the annexation and zoning of properties into the Argo-Virginia Canyon Mountain Park land development.
We have a second.
Second,
Should we do roll call? Roll call.
Chuck Howard,
yes.
Katie Maxwell,
Yes.
Jefferson Litch,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ursula Kruselig,
Yes.
Chair Cindy Olsen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, old business?
Autograph that, Cindy, for me.
No old business tonight.
Okay, and yeah, anybody have anything else? If not, we'll adjourn at 6:19 p.m. Wow.
Cool. See you later. And we'll just move into a work session unless anyone needs a break.
Thank you so much. My commissioner is very nice to see you. Have a great week.
Okay.
Good evening. All right, so,
That, in case they need that.
we'll see you next Sunday.
Monday.
I'm just gonna grab some water. Somebody need some water.
Okay, so topic 1 is our continuing topic of the comprehensive plan. And so I have the 3 last like substantive sections today. They're a little long, so sorry about that, but it's the environment section and the parks, open space and trails and recreation section and the economic development and tourism elements. And I'll just quick, I would say I did not make major changes to these sections as proposed. I would say the big change to the environment section is more consideration of wildfire mitigation. That's a clear goal of the city and kind of has to be all across the West. So I've added some more goals and the like to that to reflect the work we've done so far. For the economic and development and tourism element, this has changed a bit, but I got quite a lot of feedback from Business Community Promotions Board on what, sort of are their priorities. And then some of the big changes since 2017 was we completed the whole downtown master plan, which was sort of the big focus of 2017 plan was, let's create a solid plan for downtown, which is already. We also did the East End Overlay District, which is sort of the economic driver for the East End. So we put a lot of that in place already, and now it's just building upon it. I think one of the big things we can continue to promote is overnight stays, because that's perhaps a bit more sustainable than just packing in more day trippers and cars in the parking lots and all that. If we can get more people staying at hotels and promote that, it's a good way of long-term sustainability, perhaps, promoting off-season stays and the like. Parks, open space, trails, and recreation. I wouldn't say we've done an incredible amount of change. I worked up quite closely with the rec district to sort of craft this, and we hosted an open house that was probably had 130 people come in that day. We did it at the rec center and we did it on a taco night. So I probably had, I don't know, 30 or 40 people come through over like 4 or 5 hours during the day. And then taco night always has like hundreds of people, and they were all posting things on the,
Oh, we did the sticky notes.
yeah, they were doing all the sticky notes, so I interviewed some people, they did all the sticky notes. So it was really based on that. And the big takeaway was that people have a lot of opinions on the rec center and a lot fewer opinions on our parks and rec around the city. But so rec district got more feedback than I did, but it was still good to know that like the rec center is a key hub of the community, I think, people really care about it. And so promoting, making sure the rec district is, successful and continues to be a good partner is definitely a takeaway of that. So, and then before I get, feedback and all that, just a quick touch on next steps. My goal for the next month, once I get feedback on this, is to kind of put all the feedback together and put together a full length plan and just publish it online. And then give people like a full month, whether you're from the public or planning commission, to just look over everything and see what needs to change. So I'm hoping to have a pretty busy May to have it ready for June, and then we might be able to have this finished like in July or at worst August, unless there's major issues that you all have or city council has. I think it's doable. And that's it from me.
So did you have to incorporate anything different into the recreation part of it because of just the comment like that?
Not really. I think the big things that I heard were like, we want more hiking related things. We'd love to have better playground, but we've been hearing that in council meetings is like CRC Park really needs an upgrade. But there's nothing, I don't think there's any huge projects that anyone was like, we really need this. It's like, oh, I'd love some more dog bag stations or some more benches or some more things along the water wheel trail, like that kind of stuff. And then there was like, I'd love more group activities, like a hiking club or like a card playing club or things like that.
Or the
So
rec center, more or less.
it was more rec center stuff, but we got some other feedback from surveys earlier on, and I think in general, people were like, yeah, we could use more, but there's so much parks and recreation stuff around the area that we have other priorities, like historic character or economic development or those sorts of things that I just didn't get a ton of really negative feedback or anything. I'm like, we need this or that or this or that.
Now with them doing the skate park, is that, I didn't see where that was. Or is that too early to put a lot of that in there?
About the skate park or?
Did it? Maybe I missed it. That's what I was just looking at.
Thing at the bottom.
And actually on that conversation, this is sort of more of just like a update item, but we submitted a grant to finish out that, like a $750,000 grant to finish out that whole complex. And we're in the like final stage, like
Okay.
we were recommended for approval. There's a 3-minute presentation on May 14th.
Oh.
And so it's looking good. It's not guaranteed, but it's looking good that we will get that, and that will allow us to do like the concession stands and the playground and the tennis courts and the actual like flush toilet bathrooms and all of those.
How much is the grant?
750,000.
Right.
If we
And
don't get the grant,
then we kind of have to piecemeal it over time, but like we have some money that's needed for, it's kind of similar to CRC Park. We have money in funds that's really best optimized for grant matches. In this case, it's a little unique because we have this federal grant for the skate park. And so that is the match for this, it's like a Go Outdoors Colorado grant. But because we're like a finalist, I'd say that it's more than 50% of that we get it, which is very positive because if we can finish that out, then that's like a huge community resource.
Yeah.
So maybe it needs a little bit more discussion in the plan. I'm not sure. I think I maybe neglected it a bit because I am hopeful that we just don't have to think about it because we will have completed it like in 2027. Because if we get the grant, it'll be done in 2027.
When do you know if you get it?
Maybe June.
Oh, so it could be updated by the time you do it,
That's true.
that it would be completed, so that would be great.
do they award partial grants or is it just full? Sorry,
I don't know the answer to that. It might,
fundraising brain, I'm looking
I
everywhere.
don't know the answer to that, but I'll come back in June with an update.
Cool.
Okay. I have a question. Who, is in charge of like the horseshoe courts across from?
It would just be the city. We have 2 dedicated parks people, so I guess it's them, but it's the city.
The city? If I'm thinking maybe they should organize some horseshoe tournaments so that those things get used. I've never seen anybody on them.
What I mostly see them used for is like a impromptu dog park,
Mhm.
but I've seen it a couple of times, but yeah, maybe there should be a section about like activation of existing resources, including the horseshoe pits, CRC Park.
Maybe the rec center could have a horseshoe tournament.
Hmm?
The rec center could have a horseshoe tournament.
I know at some point,
Yeah.
someone tried to do one once. It was before I was here, but I've seen like flyers for it on the computer.
They used to play a lot in the old place. People were always
So
up
they
there
had
playing.
something around, they had shade and had like Kago, you know, like little cabin. And then it's
Yeah.
like, nowhere.
But people would drive up and just do
Wasn't a
it.
shade
Yeah.
or anything.
I
When I
think
was a kid, we had a horseshoe court in our yard.
Mhm.
horseshoe
My dad
pits
played
are,
all the time.
they're a bit over-engineered.
Mhm.
And there's like some concrete right in front of the pin, whatever you want to call it. So if you don't like throw it really well, it just flies off all willy-nilly. So maybe there's some improvements that could be made.
Concrete's supposed to be beside the pin.
Maybe we should have a tournament between the boards.
There you go.
Council planning, HPRC.
Maybe we can
Like
turn
a
into a foundation.
appointed
to
board.
build
Yeah, maybe we
buildings.
can get the ball rolling on it.
Yeah.
Maybe it can be a fundraiser to fix the kids park, because
There you
it's
go.
dangerous right now. and
Yeah.
We don't go anymore, because so it used to be the place we always were.
Yeah, it's been a lot of years since they.
So you
Now
guys-
there are no slides. There's
Isn't
all
there?
the slides closed off
Or
because
broke off?
there's a break in it. They were like literally cutting it. So
Huh.
That is
I know
being
that
worked on right
conversation's-
now
yeah.
with council. I think they will be improving that very soon.
there was a rallying cry among the families, so. I'm not
Definitely.
Surprised.
And that's where it's like, you know, they've been holding off on some of those improvements because they're like, if we can use that $100,000 from whatever fund for a grant match, we can get $500,000 worth of work instead of $100,000. But I think now it's harder to get grants and it's in such dire need that you kind of just need to do what you can, even if it's not the best park in the world. Like, it might not be the best playground in Colorado, but it will be a lot better than it is now, and that's maybe still the
You
right
want to
choice.
cut.
Yeah, they can actually slide.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to just walk up the stairs and then walk back down the stairs. As a kid, you know, you learn about the,
More exercise.
That's my 5-year-old dad. He's a little bit bored.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad we- that's what it's
I
all-
have a little comment on page 17, where it's impacts to air, noise, and light. There's a tiny sentence that says, oh, I'm in the wrong page. Right? I was looking for skip part.
Page what, 17?
17, yeah, the last sentence, I think it is, or the one before that, it says, reduction in noise pollution results in higher quality of life. And then it goes on to talk about lighting. So it's at the bottom of the second paragraph on the
Yeah.
impact. I feel like we could add at least that, I-70 is a source of noise. In that, because they're doing work, or they're gonna be doing work for noise reduction, so I figure might as well throw it in there. I don't know if it's something that will help. I don't know, we'll say something about why we need that, if it will be helpful in any way in the future, but.
Yeah, maybe some more data as well that speaks to like the impact of noise. That's a great idea. Cause yeah, it kind of just jumps really quickly from air pollution to noise pollution to lighting with no.
Yeah, just
Real
as the one sentence
information.
reduction in noise.
There's something on
Reduce.
page 1. Last sentence,
In which section?
page 21 on tourism economy. It says, as a non-ski resort destination, the city is not affected by the fickle nature of seasonal snowfall or other weather-related impacts, and I don't think that's true.
I would agree. That's very negative, Sam.
Yeah, that's definitely a great point. Because especially as we're starting to see like Clear Creek now is a lot lower. Has that started to impact and affect opening season for rafting already, I'm imagining?
They're not even sure if they're gonna have a rafting season.
Yeah. You can see
Yeah.
the
Right,
rock.
so that's like,
Okay.
are we addressing that in our comprehensive plan too, about how we might need to pivot in the future as well?
Well, we have the gondola now.
Yeah. I have not, I mean, that's true. I did not even think about that, let's see. Yeah, the impacts of. Yeah, because my goal with that section was like, okay, well, we could be even more of a destination for recreation and tourism, because like people don't want to go up to Breckenridge if there's no snow. Like, we don't need snow to have a good time, but you're right, we do need snow because otherwise we have no rafting season.
And also, I mean, I work at the restaurant a couple of days a week, and we've had mud season without mud way earlier as well, so it's way slower than if we had snow. Even if people are going to Breckenridge, they still stop to
Right.
eat here
Mm-hmm.
sometimes.
Well, I remember my first year here, I was like, oh, the winter must be our high season, right? When everyone's here, and I was like, no, summer is. And so with our rafting though, that impacts summer. Right? They're
Yeah.
coming to raft and then stay, but if there is no rafting, there's potential that they're gonna drive right through.
Yeah, now they're gonna do flow trips instead of rafting.
You can't even float, there's too many rocks.
So I would just eliminate that whole bottom, last sentence.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and probably the rafting discussion is a good one to put into the environment section, that, well, not specifically to rafting,
Right.
but
Just
like,
impact.
you know, we reviewed a couple of times ago, the like water supply element, and I've had to beef that up because like we're in voluntary water restrictions right now, and so, you know, our water supply is a lot more impacted than we anticipated, because we have tons of capacity in our plants, and the reservoir has plenty of capacity to like triple the population, but if there's no water on the mountain, it doesn't help, because we have the capacity, but there's no supply. So that is still an issue. What are thoughts on? So what's the best way to like frame that conversation, other than obviously deleting that section, that sentence, like, I do feel like maybe it's worth discussing the, you know, potential
know if
climate
it-
change impacts in like the environment
Addressing the
section.
snow and stuff is. This was just an odd year. You know, it's. Sure, it's gone down. I mean, when you take what your average snowfall is, we've changed ours from a 30-year to a 15-year average, just to lower it. But it was so unusual this year.
Well, we're not sure if it's unusual, if it's the new, right? We won't know
Yeah.
until we get into a few more years.
But then look how much just the last couple of days, this past 2 weeks changed everything, you know?
Not enough to lift the fire restriction.
Yeah, well, that, even when you're in a building, you can have fire restrictions. It's whether they're capturing water in your reservoirs and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah.
There's, to your
Address it without
question-
being negative,
Well.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's necessary to mention it, but I think it wouldn't hurt to mention that just like, I mean, the weather like affects the tourism, right? I mean, I don't know
I
how much
agree.
detail you need to add, but.
I mean, it's a statement of fact, right? It just always will be. We rely
Yeah,
on nature
regardless
for
of
this
one or
town,
another, yeah.
and the weather is part of that. So it doesn't have to be stated negatively, just factually in a way.
Right. Yeah, but then you can hit monsoons in the summertime, but that's not necessarily a negative,
Well,
because
the
the,
bike trails will probably be closed if it's monsooning, and so that impacts us
True,
with
I guess
tourism. And
that's
so, I mean, the
true.
weather just impacts
Yeah.
life outdoors.
our monsoons are a 10-minute rain and then it clears up again. You know, it's not like we get those.
We don't have
way
to
down.
specify.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
just a quick statement of,
okay, so you've got some input on that, you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's, like, because we're kind of, I think the whole county is framing itself as this like recreation-based economy, and there's some other draws. But like, we are dependent on weather acting as it should, and we have to be prepared if it doesn't act as we should. So how do we build like a resilient economy, even if the weather doesn't cooperate?
that's a good way to state it.
Resilient and flexible, maybe.
Yeah.
You don't change your plans in Colorado. The weather always changes. Okay, did you have more?
No, I just wanted to give you a thumbs up from the play of words when you mentioned COVID. Get flag something, I don't know, flag. I just thought it was funny when I was reading it.
I don't know.
I don't remember what it is.
Oh, yeah, play many communities during the start of.
Yeah.
Well, that was. I mean, clearly the city has invested quite a lot in tourism, and I think like having the business community promotions board helps a lot to have like a unified voice. But it still is important that other people bring ideas in, because I think tourism in Colorado probably is changing, partly weather related, partly like we have a much more robust transit system now than we ever did. Like we have a gondola now, you know, like I think I'm getting a lot more calls from people who are like, I'd love to build a hotel in town, or I'd love to do this like other business that is like a destination business rather than like a way station along the highway sort of business. So I'm wondering what we'll see come through our doors over the next 5 years versus the last 5. It's kind of an interesting time to be here in the city.
And maybe that is a statement to have in here somewhere where you say exactly what you just said with development it into more of a destination place with lodging potential. Something to that,
And now that
because that is the key to it.
now you guys mentioned that, I also was thinking, because it says here promoting overnight stays, and I think we mentioned the SDRs and being the total 15 licenses. And I feel like the number that we gave for those licenses were very like random. And I was thinking, well, if we are only doing primary homes and we need more overnight stays, do we actually need to limit that to only 15? If people here can help themselves stay in this community by being able to have more license, you know? So I was thinking there's something to bring up to maybe discuss about it. I don't know, if obviously right now we're not talking about SDRs, but I just made that connection and I was like, we need overnight stays.
Yeah. I think it's a valid, even if the community doesn't want it, I think it's a valid conversation to revisit. Because if you're gonna pop up 3 big hotels in town that are gonna look like, you know, they're
Out of character.
out of character, would you rather that or be able to rent some of these amazing homes downtown as a short-term rental? I don't, you know, there's that balance.
I don't think there's places to put 3 big hotels.
But if we're talking about more space for people to stay the night, there has to be something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially if there's no room for hotels.
Right?
I would love to see like someone take like 2 storefronts or 3 storefronts on Minor Street and convert the whole upstairs to like a boutique hotel with like 10 or 12 or 15 rooms. Like there's so many cities that have that and you like, you know, you could just imagine like turn Marigold's
Yeah.
partners and they like Marigold's is the reception check-in and then you go upstairs and there's all these beautiful, you know, like historic rooms. I feel like that would be a huge draw. And it wouldn't impact the city in the same way that short-term rentals or a big like chain hotel would.
And I wasn't here when the 15 number was set for short-term rentals. Like, was there any calculation done as to why 15 of?
I think people wanted less. to tell you the
Someone was
truth.
very
People-
stuck on that
Yeah,
number.
people just did not want.
But there were,
Was,
like, comparing it to like Breckenridge, if you took the number of short-term rentals by the number of homes in there, it's extremely high. And I'm not saying we want to be Breck,
right,
but 15 out of, how many homes do we have here?
about, I'd say if you include apartments, it's just under 1,000.
Seems quite small, right? And that's just
It's-
personal
it's-
opinion, and I
it's
know
like
it's a
one-
touchy
it's under
subject, don't get me
2%.
wrong.
It's like 1% maybe. Yeah, I mean, Bear Creek County, for example, capped their number at 4.5% of county residences. And so then if you build 120 units, those are 4.5% of those units. That's how much, you know, you add 100, then we've added 4.5 new licenses in town. And so then over time, like when they started, they had like 150 permits, maybe now they have 162 as people build more housing. So every year they just calculate the total number of housing units and say this is the number of licenses. Yeah, it seems like maybe 15 was just, there was 15 people doing it or something in town, and then they just said, all right.
No,
I'm
it
trying to
was-
remember, it was pretty controversial.
It was very random. When I remember that someone said 15 and they stuck with 15, they wouldn't change
Yeah.
15 and
Yeah,
there was no calculation.
It isn't. And this is an educated statement, but I would venture to guess short-term rentals, like when you think of places are a draw for people to come and experience the town and stay in a really cute, unique space. It's common for people, that's when they travel now, that's what they do.
I get comments like that all the time. I suppose you do too, or did. But yeah, oh, we didn't know that was there. We didn't know there was so much to do.
Because there is a lot, right? And it's only gonna grow, but again, I know it's a
The
subject for
bigger-
another time, but I do think it's one to revisit at some point as we,
I mean, we're in a good position if we did want to revisit it because we have it at such a low number that increasing it slightly is not, well, there will be residents who definitely don't like it, but it's less controversial than the alternative, like Summit County or Breckenridge, which was like, we have 2,500 licenses and we want to cap it at 1,000. And so we're not going to give a new person it until it drops that level. Those are
no, but yeah.
like, it was some great, like Summit County, I think, has 5,000-ish short-term rentals, and they're trying to drop it half that number.
Yeah, that's
And so like, there was 6-hour-long meetings full of public comment when they were putting the caps in place. Because it's a huge business,
Yeah.
so, but here, you say, we're gonna add 10 licenses. Normally, when a license comes up, we get 4 or 5 people who apply.
Of course.
So.
Hard to meet the requirements.
And we also know
Yeah.
that there are people doing it illegally anyway, so
Right.
might as well
Yeah.
get them
And that might
legally.
bring in those people
And,
so that they get inspected and
and the requirements are very stringent, right? Have to be part of your permanent residence.
Yeah,
Makes it difficult, but yeah, I think the point of planning commission is to talk about the controversial topics, right? And there's not gonna be. There's very few topics that everybody's behind on, and so when new things get built, you're gonna have people who like it and people who don't.
Yeah, maybe there is a conversation to be had, not of like, we're just gonna open it up right away, but as more housing gets built, we will add
Yeah.
a few. I mean, I think there's definitely a few people, there's more interest in town now, real estate wise, like I've gotten in the last month, let's say, probably calls from 10 or 15 potential home buyers who are like, I want to live in Idaho Springs. I live in Arvada, or Nevada, or Littleton or somewhere, and I want to be in Idaho Springs. But I can't afford this $600,000 house unless I rent out a bedroom, and I don't want a long-term roommate, but I would rent out my basement space to a short-term renter. And so we probably will get more people coming in asking for it, especially if the condo is as successful as everyone expects.
And with the improvements at the hot springs and everything else that's been going, that's talked about, I'm in Denver every day, that's around even just my little space, everyone talks about the hot springs. How great it is now compared to what, it just is. So those are good things, it's good talk and conversation, tagged into Argo and tagged into downtown and.
Right.
Idaho Springs is a topic of conversation right now,
Right.
outside of here.
5 years from now, the Clear Creek Trail
And-
might connect from Golden to Idaho Springs and people can bike away without, the risk of
it's
getting
been
hit
a
by a
long
car.
project.
That was.
We'll
so
continue to,
long.
It's $1 million
Have y'all
a
driven
mile.
down it
Yeah.
so far? There's so much work to be done.
I know, it's exciting.
Okay, we're kind of getting
Sorry.
off on,
well,
okay,
it's
did we
all
have it?
related to.
It helps you
development and
add
tourism.
statements and stuff into it.
I have one thing too, and it was where provide park amenities for residents of all ages and abilities.
I
Part of
was
that.
just reading that one too.
Yep. Our parks might be a great spot if we could get some kind of Native American studies or, some communities even set up, and I'm thinking Hawaii right now. They will set up a whole village and then give the history of that area of what those people did before the white man came to the area. It- Just a thought. I mean, I found it very interesting at the time.
Well, I know there's like, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, in Frisco, they have their like gazebo. There's like a big gazebo in the downtown and they have like a teepee and some other, and there's like signage related to that and kids can like play in that area and provide some history of like the, you know, the peoples who were there before there were white settlers to the area. So something like that is definitely underrepresented in this community.
And the hot springs is a great place because that's where the Indians met.
That could be an interesting idea for the, you know, the powder house that was renovated last year. It's just past the hot springs and Little Bear and sort of Creek.
Yeah, kind of up on,
Some of the, like, council is very interested in turning that into like a picnic area / city park. That could be a really interesting activation there, given that it's part of Soda Creek and the hot springs come in right there and all of that. Interesting.
yeah, you said that on.
Yep. I will add some discussion on that to it. I think there's probably more room for just history in the parks in general, Native American and that pre-white history, some more gold mining stuff, some more railroading things. Like, there's definitely more room to get people to linger in our parks and learn a little bit while also having a picnic, whatever. Great.
Good. Okay. Are we good on the comprehensive plan?
Thanks, Dylan, for all the work.
Of course, thank
Really
you.
coming together.
July goal still, right?
Yes, yeah, if I
That's
can
great.
get it, if I can get the full thing published with pictures and some formatting in June for the draft, then I think we could have a conversation in July about how it all looks, and then I could take it to council in July, and if they're like, we hate it, then we won't have it done in July. If they're like, this is great, then we could have it adopted at worst in August.
Are you gonna roll it out to the public before for last minute comments, or do you feel the public meetings you've had is enough?
My plan is by the June 4th meeting to publish a draft on the website
Okay.
and post it around town and say like,
Look at it.
I'm looking for planning commission comments, but also any public comments. And then at the July meeting, I can get your feedback and I can say, here was the public feedback and here's the like, any changes I've incorporated based on that. So if it takes till August, it's not like it costs the city any additional money. It just means that I have to keep working on it for slightly longer. So it's not the end of the world if it takes a little longer, but it would be good to get into implementation in the fall.
Okay, the lighting, so we're just looking to discuss this again, but not recommend it to the council yet.
Right, I wanted to come back one more time after I had looked into things a little bit more because it hadn't been touched in a while and see if. So that we'd be ready to have Nick and Carmen draft, either update the ordinance or just keep it as is. And move forward, so. Like right now, you know, I have a few questions in here, you know, I think broadly it's pretty good. I think the intent was the first one I had is like, right now, it only applies to new projects going forward and only projects that are over 500 square feet. So if I build a 400 square foot garage, I could put spotlights that are 10,000 lumens and super bright and harsh light. And it's exempt. So I think the first question is that reasonable, or do we want to say like, maybe it's just any building permit that has a lighting component needs to comply? Or do we want it to be any new light, like say my light at my front door falls off, I have to replace it with a compliant fixture. That's hard to enforce, but it seems like there could be a lot of projects that are under 500 square feet, and I don't know if we want to accept those or not.
I don't think.
I don't know.
So you're thinking there's commercial things that would be under 500 feet?
Not necessarily. necessarily,
Because I
but
would think the commercial, we would want to comply
yeah, of any size.
of any
but-
size, yeah.
But I
I could
think
apply to like a shed. Shed requires a building permit, right?
if it's over 120 square feet,
Yes, a shed that's 200 square feet would be.
and it would apply to residential projects, so. Like if you're building an apartment complex, of course it applies, it's over 500, or like if someone wanted to build a tiny home on their property, 495 square feet, they would be exempt under this draft ordinance, so. To me, it feels like maybe we just remove that and say if it requires a building permit, you wanna do lighting. It has to comply. And if you're just doing a shed and there's no lighting on the exterior, it doesn't matter.
Right. Because you can, so when you're building it, you can put the lights on it, but if you wanna buy a separate light, like a spotlight because of animals or something, it can be whatever. It's a fixed light,
Yeah, I
might be
mean,
the key.
that's a good question.
Mhm.
How do people feel about, like, this is where it gets complicated, is like, I have an existing house and I wanna redo all my exterior lights. But it doesn't require, like,
A building permit, not at all.
cause I'm just replacing the fixture, so I don't have to comply, I could put in a super bright bulb and put in something that shines directly up. Do we want, is that something we want to address, or is that something we wanna steer clear of?
I don't know, or you leave it within the neighbors and let them,
That was gonna be my
Ask the
suggestion,
person.
can we add something that is complaint based, like we do most of the.
We wouldn't,
The rule.
we wouldn't know necessarily unless we had somebody driving around town, unless the neighbors complain.
Right, but, right, and then, you know, how,
you can't, yeah, that's a tough one.
because like, I may just not like my neighbor, and so I'm like, I know that they've had this fixture for 10 years. But now that there's these regulations, I'm going to complain, and then it's on them to prove they've had it for 10 years, or I make them take it down and build a new one. That's what I ran into in other places where they have lighting restrictions, where they do that, and then they say, you have to, every light has to comply, becomes an enforcement nightmare between neighbors. Like, the neighbors just go back and forth with each other.
Well, maybe it makes the neighbors be nice to their neighbors.
Yeah,
Put it in there and don't tell anybody.
I will say I don't necessarily agree with them proving that it's been 10 years.
I don't either.
Because at the end of the day, if we're enforcing this, the end result is us bringing them to court to enforce this ordinance. And we would have to prove that they were in violation.
But wouldn't we just say, I mean, in this example where we say every light has to comply, then we'd say this light doesn't comply, and if you don't fix it,
Yeah,
we say it doesn't matter if it was
That is
existing
true.
or not.
yeah, if it
Like,
doesn't
that's, I
matter,
think,
yeah.
how we'd have to do it, is to say like, everyone has, any new project complies immediately if it needs a building permit, residential or commercial, and it has lighting. For any existing light, you have 5 years
Yeah.
or 10 years
Definitely.
Just
to
like we
get
did
into
the hotels.
compliance.
Mhm.
And if on, January 1st, 2035, we get a complaint that you have a non-compliant light, you have to change it out for a compliant
Yeah.
light. And if you don't, then we have the evidence because we see the light.
Yeah,
So that, I think that if we wanted to go that way and get every light into compliance, then that's probably the best way to do it.
yeah,
Based on,
I
I think,
think
what
so.
Nick thinks,
Mhm.
but I don't know if we want to take it that far. Well,
Hello. Hello. Are you guys just coming to join our work session?
We have a 7 o'clock for my liquor license.
Oh,
But hurry
this,
up then.
you're on
Oh,
this is the wrong meeting or
that's on
something.
Monday. That's the city council meeting.
Oh.
I thought it was the 7th.
Did Wonder put, I can blame Wonder, but let me check
Uh-oh.
what she sent out on the
You
11th.
guys wanna hang out?
Is it,
Wanna talk
it
about
is
lighting?
7 o'clock too.
Right on time.
Yeah, you're right on
Decision
time,
on
but wrong meeting.
Is it the 11th?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it's
It's
Monday.
possible that we like, when we sent it out, it said the 7th or something, but yeah, you're definitely on the agenda.
Okay, I thought it was the 11th, and I think
You're
she
big
wrote maybe
beast.
7th
That could
on the
be,
sign
yeah.
that I put in my window.
Oh, that
Yeah, no
could
worries.
be. But yeah, you're definitely on
Okay, so
the
it's-
agenda
it's
for
Monday?
Monday at 7 p.m.
Okay, alright,
Sorry,
we'll see you then.
Thanks for coming in.
you're lucky that we were even meeting, otherwise the door would have just been locked.
I have a question about, motion detector lights. Do they have to comply lumen wise?
Well, that's a good
It's-
question.
These
So
are
those are
interesting
questions.
conversations because I've been buying lights like you would believe. Cause flipping mountain lines. And they're at my front door.
Right, well,
And I'm trying to get everything to pop on. It doesn't scare the thing. Have you seen it then? Did you hear it this morning? Oh, I was out there
We-
screaming this morning.
now, what other places do is they say, okay, we could have like Wheat Ridge, for example, they say lights of 100 watts or less per fixture are exempt, and fluorescent lights 40 watts or less are exempt. Regardless, as long as you keep that below that level, you're exempt, but anything higher than that is not exempt. But you could say, for motion activated lights that stay on for less than 5 or 10 minutes, they can be any brightness, but they need to shut off by a certain amount of time, and maybe there's like a requirement that it only triggers up to the property line or something, because otherwise, like, you know, my neighbor has a garage and you drive past it and it just lights up the sky every 10 minutes, every time someone drives by, like, maybe that's not really solving it. I don't know, I mean, it's not contemplated in this draft ordinance, but if that's a good idea to have on brightness and motion activated, then I think that's the conversation to have now. If we want to add it or not, or if we just exempt them.
Yeah, I've got two of them on my property, but they don't shine anyplace else other than my property.
Do
I
we
don't
get
know.
any complaints?
Not really. I don't know if we did back when we initially started working on it. It seems like it's more people, we talked about like care about recreation and the environment and nature and being part of it, so we wanna like make it a little less bright.
Right. I think when we originally started this, it was Barbara Cole, which I forgot that this was what she had put together. The intent was new construction, like when they built, like the rec center, the
Right,
clinic and,
yeah. like
you know, all that. Never really thinking it was going into all the residential stuff, where now we're talking about different scenarios that do we want to get that far into it?
Well,
think
and,
so.
and the commercial lights, I think, need a timer so that they either dim or go off at a certain time.
Well, if they're abiding by the night sky thing, there'll be down lights. I mean, I can see where they keep lights on their properties for,
You know, for
Vandalism and
security
theft
reasons
and
and
stuff,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, here in this report, they, like, some other communities, they regulate brightness by saying like, there's a different commercial brightness allowed at the daytime versus the night. And so you either have to have an automatic dimmer or you just manually dim. I don't know what a nit is, but that's how they regulate it. It's like a certain number of nits that you're allowed to do that. So what do people think? Like, should it apply to just new construction that's over a certain square footage, any new construction, residential or commercial only, and multifamily?
I mean, I think with intention that we had to get this going, I feel like it should apply for the whole community, new and existing. That's my thought.
I agree with that term limit of, existing has 5 years.
yeah. Or long.
Again, very similar to what we do with the hotels, right? And so you have
Yeah,
time,
you have time.
so it's not a financial strain on anyone,
Yeah,
hopefully with that amount of time.
no light lasts 5 years, so.
Exactly. So.
My fixture lasts more than 5 years.
Yeah, that's true.
It's gonna say I've liked that are longer than 5 years old.
So, okay.
You may want to, I mean, you could consider letting existing fixtures keep going.
Well, I mean, I think that is the question is, I mean, Uchi, is it correct to say that you think a new construction has to comply immediately, but like existing construction has to have compliant fixtures in like X period of time?
Yeah, I'm fine with 5 years. I think whenever they update it, they should also, comply. And now I wrote down on the sunset period, I think, yes, on the low watts. And maybe, I don't know, yeah, and kind of what we're talking about being enforced, like if it's someone notices it, mentions it. Because you guys obviously don't have to go house by house to make sure they're compliant. And I guess even if someone complains that we're talking about, they'll have 5 years to get it done unless someone complains about it.
No, they'd still have 5
Still
years.
5 years.
Yeah, they have 5 years no matter what.
Code will be enforced until that 5 year mark, and then if they complain, they would have to.
How tall are our lights outside right now? Cause we have height restrictions in here too. Which is interesting.
Well, typically the way it's written would be that municipal lighting would be exempt, right?
Yeah, I will say this, and I think, this is just my suggestion, but I don't think our office drafted whatever this draft ordinance
So
is.
it Barb Cole.
Yeah, so I think if maybe instead of voting on it next month, if we're all in agreement that we want to see more, you let Carmen and I discuss it, actually draft something that implements itself into the code, because I'm also not so sure how much what she put together here actually fits within the existing code.
I'm glad you said that, because once I realized that that's who put this together, I was
Yeah.
not a fan.
Well,
So that's just my suggestion is like, if we're all in agreement about some of these items and that we want to see more of this, I think maybe Dylan and I take the conversation from tonight and just come back with a more refined product for
Okay.
next time.
that is definitely my goal, is like we need a new ordinance, but it could largely have the same
Yeah.
stuff in it. And so I would just want to make sure that we add stuff to it that we think is important before we just bring back the same thing.
Yeah, I think what probably happened is she probably saw a bunch of examples and then kind of mush them all together. And I have done that before in the past, and a lot of times when you do that, you realize that it's not really making much sense and you kind of have to start from the ground floor. And that may have happened here.
I've got one other thought. If you're lighting something that's very high up, as an example, the top of the Argo, when that gets done, if that's all shining down, it's gonna be awful bright down here.
Well, I think that downlights are to direct it down to the ground, not down this way. It's not
Well-
gonna be directional.
But I
Yeah,
guess like at the top of the gondola, it's right on the edge, like
and it's,
you probably see it. It might only be
See it
20
pretty
feet
bright
off the
when you
ground,
see it.
but it's 1,300 feet off the valley floor. But that I think could maybe be addressed with that, like at night, there's either you turn it off or it has to be dimmed to a certain wattage perhaps, or nits. Oh,
It's,
Are we complaining? Have to do something about it.
okay,
all of their lights, I saw the lights today, the ones that are like canned into the top of the underside of the gondola terminal, they're all recessed lights. They would meet the requirements of being fully cut off. And so it's probably more a matter of brightness since you can't, or then turning it off after a certain.
And I think the light you're talking is they're keeping like a terminal light in the motor room and stuff like that. There is a pretty bright light up there.
Yeah,
They're doing that right
When-
now.
Before everybody came in, I was telling Dylan that there was one light up there that I noticed as I'm driving home facing that direction that was really, really bright. And then 2 nights later, it was dim. So I don't know if they were working up there that late. I mean, it was after 9 o'clock at night.
Okay, so I like that let's revisit this.
I have one more thing, if you don't mind, the parking conversation about the lights, I know, I mean, I like the idea of like after certain hours, it goes off like an hour and it can be turned an hour before service or whatever. All the parking that we have around here, they're all public, right? Even the one from the clinic
Yeah.
here, that is used even when they're closed, right? For the city?
They're gonna use it this summer.
Okay.
Yeah, the
I
signs
mean,
are already up.
They're-
The
yeah,
signs
they're-
are up, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we need parking, so that makes sense. If it's an option to have them don't turn the light, I mean, I guess, would that mean that if it's open 24 hours, the lights are on 24 hours? Can we ask them to be motion detected lights?
Yeah, you probably could, but,
Or there would be like nighttime brightness versus daytime.
yeah, I will say though that just as like a safety thing, like
Yeah.
Totally.
ladies walking to her car, she, maybe got drunk earlier in the day, went home, now she's gotta go grab her car, it's 3 a.m, like. I think there's legitimate safety concerns about wanting the parking lot to,
Or she's working
Has
late
lights.
in the lab.
Well,
Yeah.
even downtown, do we have 24-hour parking in the parking lots behind the?
Only the residential.
There's certain good question. I think you're not allowed to park overnight, but then there's exemptions for like residents.
Yeah.
Who like live on Minor Street. So
And I
like,
think once in a while, when you do see that vehicle down there, it's the guy that did walk home instead of drove the guy. not the
yeah,
guy.
I don't know, unless someone's like abandoning their vehicles multiple nights in a row, I don't think that we're like those people, but nothing is open between 2 a.m. and 6, or nothing is open 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. anyway, so there's really no, like, other than residents or people working at the bakery, things like that, they're still coming out to their car late at night or early in the morning, so they need some level of lighting, and that's where addressing that maybe through like night brightness, day brightness, those sorts of things is more effective than just saying you have to shut off these sort of safety, things. Other question on the sunset period, because it sounds like folks generally are in favor of making people get in compliance after 5 years or whatever time, even for existing lights. Would that apply also, in your opinion, to every light, like whether it's a Carl's Jr. lit up sign, whether it's a, or it's a my exterior light, or it's the Argos, canned lights or whatever, like, would it apply to every kind of lit up thing 5 years from now? And we'd say, sorry, 5 years from now, Carl's Jr., you have to replace the light, the sign.
I don't feel bad about asking Carl's Jr. to replace their sign, I'm not gonna lie. So, it's probably a struggle, but it would be,
I got the vibe from you guys that the answer is yes, I
Yeah.
think.
And then there has to be some thought on the motion lights and exemptions.
Yeah.
That could be something maybe you guys.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what other people.
Is there any other things to talk about before we let Nick and Carmen go for it?
I have one quick question. What's the status on the parking garage? Is there anything going on with that?
It's being designed. Like, all the design work will be ongoing where it's basically shovel ready, but we don't, like, the city doesn't have funding to build a parking garage. So like, certain elements of that project are moving forward, like the transit center improvements, for Mustang and Pegasus and Greyhound and Roundabout and all that, and certain improved, like surface parking improvements and some, like they did new curbs on Minor Street, but like at the moment, unless the city gets grant funding, we can't actually build a parking
Yeah,
structure.
and probably gonna take at least 2 to 3 years to get good grant.
So it'll be ready to go if and when there's money to actually build it,
And that's gonna be another place where you're gonna need lighting.
Right, and that will have a lot of lighting need, parking structures have a lot of lights. Because those are especially scary at night, perhaps. Can be.
Sorry, one more, Nick.
No,
Sorry. On number 8, on page 46, it says extension outdoor recreational uses. And it says that all the lights have to be extinguished no later than 11 p.m. I was thinking, well, it's kind of a bummer because if they're doing concerts over there, just kill it at 11 p.m. Is there a way to, I don't know if there's like, if it doesn't affect the residential area, like, can we modify that to be later or by permit or I don't know?
I think isn't it part of their special,
That's
Use
what I was
permit?
thinking. I think the
Yeah.
special event permit that they get is probably covering that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
just like the
Then never
noise?
mind.
Yeah,
You would just say,
Hormones, yeah.
these restrictions are in effect unless otherwise provided for in a city issued special event permit.
Perfect.
And I think that would get us there.
See,
And that could apply to, I don't know that the Argo will ever plan on operating past like 11 p.m. or whatever it says, but I suppose that would apply there too, right? Like if they're having an event, they keep their lights on. I don't know if they would count as recreation or, whatever that is, but
Well, I think of the skate park. You hear people that make phone calls and
Outdoor
the lights get
recreation.
turned on and then they call them and they get lights turned back on.
and there's some parks where you can like push a button and it turns on for like 30 minutes. I mean, that would require us to invest in a completely new lighting system at the ball fields, which is not cheap, but that would be nice because then if you show up, you want to skate at 2 a.m, you hit the button and it turns on for 30 minutes.
I would think don't they regulate the hours of use there?
Yeah, I think it's
I
an
would think
hour
they'd want
before
it,
sunrise to
yeah.
an hour after
You don't want
sunset.
anybody out there skating it too. I'm not-
Yeah.
Certainly.
Use
All the
solar
city
light.
parks are it's like an hour after sunset for all the parks.
Is it?
So, I don't know, maybe in the winter, if it's a really not, like, once it's getting dark at 4 p.m, maybe there's a conversation to be had about having the lights on later and letting people be in the park after sunset, but in the summer, if your sunset's like 9:30, people could be out with 10:30. Well, Nick, I think that gives us enough to go off of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If anyone has anything else, we've got a month to work on this,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
please just send it along. Okay, so then can we move on to this last topic on parking?
Yes.
So there's few items, obviously in this report, I'll just kind of go down I kind of have it set, so it's like requests for each different thing, just to try, because there's a lot going on, because parking is such a wide ranging thing. But,
People are being creative.
yeah, so part of it is just like, if we're gonna talk parking at all, we might as well talk about various things. So first one is off-street parking requirements. This has come up. I think it's worth discussion for 2 different types of potential new development. The first is senior housing projects. Like right now, it's just the same standards as for any residential. But we see like with Mitchell White and with the Project Support Senior Center, like they only use on average less than a space per unit. And so like they don't meet their parking requirements technically. And so studies show that in general, regular multifamily development is about 1.4 spaces per unit on average, just across developments everywhere in the country. That's pretty much in line with what we have. Like The field house, I think, is like 1.7 spaces or 1.6 across all their units, so. But the demand for senior housing is actually about half a space per unit. But we don't allow for that, and with some more focus for the city on senior housing in the future, we think it could make sense to reduce. Like create a special call out for senior housing, so that if someone wants to develop senior housing, the city is doing it, but there could be other proposals in the future as well, so it's not just for the city. It's a more efficient use of space. We don't just have a bunch of empty parking spaces that aren't used. So,
Would it affect the senior housing now to,
well,
or just for the new one?
it would be any new ones, or if they were coming in and saying, hey, we're redeveloping, you know, and we'd say, all right, well, we're not gonna make you build 1.5 spaces
Right.
per unit, it's only 1 space per unit instead.
Yeah.
Now, it, or whatever we came to. My thought is we maybe put a like senior housing, allowance at 1 space per unit for senior, like specifically senior housing.
Mhm.
And that still has reduced it on average by 1.5 space per unit. Which is a good start, but I'd be interested to see if people like that idea or think it should be even lower.
I think it's fine. I don't see how it's affecting anything right now. Because those places are built and they already have the parking spots, but to build the new one, I thought maybe that's where it's to help them meet. I mean, or do you see the potential of more senior housing being built in town?
There's definitely a need for it. That parcel the city bought is obviously like a prime example of who would benefit from it immediately, you know, like that's possible to not bring up, but they could, you know, like the city could build to 1.5 spaces per unit, but that clearly takes away from the total number of units you can build. And if you're trying to solve housing issue and data shows you only need on average half a space per unit, is there really a reason not to allow anyone, city or otherwise, to build slightly more units with the same amount of parking?
I'm fine with it, with the senior housing,
Yeah,
with the wording that he's talking about doing.
Yeah.
it doesn't bother me at all to have 1 per unit. You truthfully may not need that much,
Right.
except for visitors maybe.
That's what I was thinking as visitors.
I think 1 per unit would, play it safe, would allow for that.
Because I know at Project Support, they've got what, 6 or 8 spots down there.
Yeah, they have 8 spaces for 14
14.
units, so it's 0.57 spaces per unit.
And they're not ever filled completely.
Right. Yeah, I know parking is very controversial, and I think when I move on to affordable housing projects that aren't senior related, that will get more pushback. But for seniors, it seems like 1 space per unit is pretty conservative for the need, but does help, you know, make it easier to build housing that's pretty important.
I think that's plenty senior.
Yeah, if the data supports it, then that's even better.
All right. That's great. Thank you for that. So then we can do some more research on it. Like, I don't think we just like come right out and say, hey, we're doing a code amendment and an ordinance just for this one change. We want to make sure that it's actually works, all that, but that's great. I figured at the same time, like, I think senior housing is a lot easier conversation, but affordable housing in general is worth a discussion on, like, is it worth considering different parking requirements if you're doing like a low income housing project? And the reason I bring it up is like Riverbend, when they got approved, they put together a parking study, and that parking study allowed them to build at an average of 1.08 spaces per unit instead of the 1.5 or 1.6 that like Fieldhouse Apartments builds. And I've never really seen any concerns about parking at that location. So right now, planning commission and council could, you know, just say, let's leave it as is, but people can do a parking study, and if that parking study shows that we could reduce parking, we handle it that way. But I thought it was worth getting
Limiting
feedback
the
on, is
study.
it worth lowering the requirement to kind of, I don't know, incentivize or promote more affordable housing development.
I think Riverbend, part of them to meet it was to be able to use street parking also. It was counted into it. If I remember right.
That may be true.
Mhm.
I feel like I like this idea, well, some studies suggest that between 30 and 80% of the AMI range are the ones that use less. So I feel like maybe if we were to say, like, if it was a 30 to 50% AMI, then for sure they could get less spaces per unit.
You mean if it's a lower?
If it's lower
Income.
income, because I feel like
The
that
only
makes
problem you
sense.
have with, when you get to some of that, you get multiple people living in a place and you have multiple cars. Because they're trying to afford it more, so you have more people living in
But that's why if it's 30 to 50 only, like, you know, the lower ones, where it's way cheaper, where you don't have to necessarily, well, I mean, we don't know anybody's conditions, but
yeah.
you know, where's the
I mean-
cheapest option, then you would assume that they can afford that with less people in the place.
I mean, when you think about affordable housing, we don't have any projects right now that this would pertain to. But if you take like Riverbend, just knowing some of the people that have lived there and stuff, then they qualify for one of the places and they do have 2 cars, even with that lower.
But
I don't know what
they're
they're,
over, I think they're 60, right? 60 to 80 or something.
that's what I was wondering, what is
Yeah,
there?
they're like higher. We don't have anything, I don't think there's 30 to 50.
Okay.
Some of the units I think
I
are as
think
low as
are
30,
because
but it might be in the 30.
It's hard to qualify to live
Well,
there.
because it is low income housing tax credits, so I think it did have to be under 60%. Because, like, that's what qualifies now. You can do averaging, I guess. So maybe that's how it happened, is there's some that are like at 80%, but the average is like 50%.
Okay.
I know the state has funded some projects that way. They've said, as long as you keep the average under this amount, you count as affordable, even if you have some like luxury units in the development that are market rate. I mean, one project that theoretically could be impacted if this was changed, and they could do a parking study regardless, would be the folks under contract at the Carlson. But I do think, like, although research shows affordable housing developments have a smaller demand for parking, I think it is also parking so controversial here that it maybe it's worth making a housing developer go through the parking study, rather than just allow them to have less parking on its space. Because, like, we didn't say, hey, Riverbend, you can just have 1.08. They had to provide the evidence through an engineered report that said that it would only generate that demand.
I would make them all go through a parking study. And that's just personal, again, because parking is gonna be controversial for a while, right? And so
It's not gonna go away.
it's not gonna go away, so for the foreseeable future, you'd wanna see justification as to why they're wanting to utilize the space in that way instead of us utilizing it a different way. That's just my thought.
So you're asking to reduce the number on affordable housing projects also?
Well, if we're talking about senior housing, I figured it's worth talking about that as well.
Mhm.
That's something that a lot of communities are doing to kind of like help affordable housing projects happen, is like, okay, if you can reduce this by 8 parking spaces, I can get 2 more units, which makes it pencil in the deal. But again, like I said, for whatever it costs to do a parking study, if you can show that you're gonna generate less parking demand, then we can still consider a reduction in parking per code right now. So if we're more comfortable going that route, we could just not change anything.
Okay.
I mean, thinking as a
I like that
devil
idea.
advocate too, is like, I mean, we're not that big, we're not that different on one side from the other, so I feel like. I mean, I agree with, you know, yeah, it makes sense to have everybody do a parking study,
Mhm.
but at the same time, I mean, that is also, I don't know how much it costs. I don't know if it's like a big percentage of their investment or whatever, but I don't know if that will make a difference for them to be able to have actually more affordable things. Apartments, I don't know.
I don't think a parking study would. I like the idea of taking the affordable housing projects out and doing the parking study.
No, I don't know.
I don't think it's that big of a cost, and if they're coming in and developing something,
They should
it's
be.
kind of the cost of business, yeah.
Mhm.
Just like a traffic study, you know, a parking study, they have to do a traffic study.
And they can always ask for a variance
Yeah,
too, right?
they might be able to show that they don't meet something and it can be adjusted then, instead of just putting something in here and them automatically getting to do it.
They could ask for a variance, but they would almost certainly be denied because they wouldn't be able to meet the criteria.
And they would accommodate
But it
it.
was a hardship. I mean, I
Yeah.
think, like, the code already allows, they say, hey, you have to have 1.5 spaces per 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom. 2.25 for a 3 bedroom over 900 square feet, you know. Or if you don't want to use this table, in lieu of that, you can provide an engineered parking study that suggests a different numbers, and we can consider that instead. And so in that case, they don't have to request a variance necessarily. They could just say, my parking study shows I only need 6 parking spaces instead of 8. So can I have 6 instead of 8? And then we could say, well, yes or no, I guess.
I like that.
Yeah.
That option.
And then, you know, again, I don't know how much it costs. I would guess for a very large project, it's probably in the tens of thousands of dollars to do a parking study, which when you're talking a 30 to 50% AMI housing project, you probably don't want to spend, but if that's, I mean, in this particular town, parking's, you know, quite conversation, so it's probably worth making them go through that process.
Yeah,
I-
once you
I
do,
was-
somebody will complain about it.
Yeah, and if it weren't the topic of conversation consistently, then it wouldn't be right, but I just.
Right. Well, and I mean, truth be told, the Fieldhouse project provided the number of parking spaces the code requires. They didn't even do a parking study. They said, we're just gonna meet it completely, and the neighbors still don't think there's enough parking, so. And they're not Idaho Springs affordable housing, though they're affordable housing for the state.
Right.
So. Okay, so I think we'll keep working on perhaps some changes to senior housing, but we'll keep things as they are for just non-age restricted housing. And move forward with that as we can. Okay, so the next one is kind of this broad question on, do we want to consider any other changes to parking, or parking table right now? And I think particularly in respect to commercial uses, some of it's kind of funky. So for example, rafting headquarters. The way our code is written, it says rafting headquarters must provide 1 parking space per 400 square feet of gross floor area. You say, what's gross floor area? That's the interior of the rafting headquarters. And so like, some of these places, they only have 1,000 square foot building. They only have to provide 3 parking spaces. But we know that, and kind of a similar thing would be like theater or event center use. It says 1 space per 4 seats. And like, that's weird because what if you have a standing room only concert hall that has 150 person occupancy? How do you deal with that? So I think our code is pretty clear when it comes to certain uses, like an office space or whatever, it probably captures that. I don't know if it does a great job of capturing like a rafting use where there's 8 people per boat coming to the site and they have storage uses and all these things. And, you know, rafting is an important part of our local economy in the summer, and you don't want to like single them out, but that's just the best example I had off the top of my head because it's the one that kind of feels quite out of touch with like the reality of their impact on the city. Because I'd say 99% of people who come here to raft just park in city parking lots.
Yeah.
And that's true of most downtown businesses, of course, because they don't have parking, but. So thoughts on, should we look into commercial parking and do like sort of study on what other people do, or do you think it's sort of
what are you thinking with this? What? Cause you said you're not it's funky the way it is.
Like they don't provide enough parking, right?
Are you thinking they're not providing enough, or we should loosen it up, or which way, what are you thinking?
Well, I don't know how we came up with that number. It feels very arbitrary, but if you say like, hey, I'm launching 8 boats on this trip, like we have a school bus full of kids and rafters. But we have 2 parking spaces, like it feels like, again, like, I'm not trying to like call out rafting, but it's like an example of one where I feel like there's no data to suggest that 2 spaces that it should be tied to their square footage of their building. It should be tied to something else that actually measures the impact on parking.
I think when this originally was done, we weren't thinking that all of a sudden they're taking this little building and running a rafting company out of it. And then this little space over here and they're running a rafting company. I think it's developed into that. To where, yeah, the building size doesn't make sense. 2 spots and then they've got 40 people that show up for 2 spots.
And so the newer
Should be
builds
by
all
person.
meet code.
Rafting?
No,
Is that
I
right?
think
Idaho has enough
there is
spots
no
for
new builds.
parking for the number of people going up and down the gondola, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, how would that go? Would that go for new builds or you will have to make the ones that exist?
Well, the way, I guess the way it's written now would be like, if you're coming in with a new business, you have to provide off-street parking in accordance with your requirements. So like, once you're in until you change the use to something else, and then we kind of look at it again, right? Like if someone's coming in every year for business license, we don't really look and say, do you still have enough parking? Do you still have enough parking? But if a new business came in, this is what happened in the downtown area and kind of why parking fee in lieu exists is like, some of these bigger restaurants have been in place before 2018. They don't have to provide any parking, but any new business who comes downtown, if they're increasing the intensity of use, they have to provide parking. And so like certain businesses bring a lot more people to town and don't have to provide parking, and like a small little gift shop has to figure out how to provide 2 parking spaces. And that's why we did fee in lieu, so that like someone could still come in and pay a fee instead of physically creating a space. And so, I mean, that's another kind of topic for today is, do we address fee in lieu a little bit more, which we have talked about in the past, and maybe expand it to more parts of the city, or change the fee structure. I picked that up because we hadn't talked about it in like a year and a half.
So you're asking for direction if we should revisit this, which it sounds like we should.
It does sound arbitrary to just have the square footage.
For this
Yeah,
one,
sorry.
I think it'd be
And then the
better
commercial has
to
changed so
see
much.
what other people do, because I have never seen anything that's not just, the square footage.
Really?
I can't think of anything other than square footage for
But
parking.
then like but then the funny thing is, for event center, we say 1 space for 4 seats. So we have it in the code, so it feels
Yeah.
very, so I'm not saying we make any changes
Sure.
necessarily, but I think it might be worth
Looking at-
investigating
Yeah.
the table and seeing if there's changes that make sense.
Yeah, I guess for like that though, even though it's not square footage, it's still like, how many people can you fit in the building, right?
Right.
This is
Well,
more like the intensity of your use almost, right? Like I don't,
yeah,
I mean, you can count seats in the racks too,
yeah,
or seats
that might be
and,
something.
and whatever other place it has seats, that is not just a event.
but then like an event space doesn't necessarily have seats. It probably should say 1 parking space per 4 occupants or
Yeah.
something in
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
respect, and it's based on occupancy, because I would guess that 1 space per 300 or 400 or whatever is largely tied to occupancy of
Yeah,
that type of, it just seems very arbitrary,
Mhm.
and since parking is such a hot button issue all the time, it feels like it's worth digging deeper and seeing, is there anything that's worth changing, even if there's appetite for it or not?
yeah,
From looking at that, it is. I mean, here you've got church, 1 space per 3 seats, or every 6 feet of a bench. It's
Right.
like- It's what it says.
Right, so some of these, like, that's a good example that I didn't even remember. Like,
Yeah.
That does seem like quite an odd way of
Yeah.
calculating parking.
Yeah.
One parking space per 6 feet of bench in a
And-
church.
None of the churches comply.
But there's no new churches either, right? Like, they're all
Yeah,
quite
so this would be
older, and
new.
so.
Right.
But then, like, how does it apply to like places of worship of other faiths, you know, like certain faiths probably don't have pews and benches or anything like that, and so it would have to be calculated differently. You know, it's-
Yeah, some of this.
I know it's interesting, but I mean, the new businesses is what's the.
Some of it just
Well, and the
seems
hard part
so
is we have a
random
sunset
that
period
maybe
on
it's
parking.
worth making it better.
That becomes a
1.5
whole
stall
different,
per classroom.
like what's,
Plus one.
what are we
stall
hoping to get out of this?
For 5-6 seats. in
Just everybody pitch in that
Yeah.
free structure.
Dylan, do we have any consideration for the food trucks as they're starting to come into town here and this parking spaces that they're taking up? Is there an upper limit on how many we could potentially have?
We did,
Yes,
yeah.
city council, when they approved the food truck ordinance, established certain spaces
Yeah,
that would be able to be used for, food trucks. And at the time that it came into effect, they were only in spaces where there was no paid parking.
Mhm.
And that has since changed. And I've heard about that a little bit, and I think food trucks will be discussed at an upcoming council work session, so there may be direction from them for us to work on potential changes to that. But as it stands now, I think there's 6 public spaces that are approved for food truck use.
yeah,
And they have to get a permit through the city.
yeah,
Yeah, and if you want to do a food truck on private property, say the Hot Springs wants to have a food truck, they need to show me that they have adequate parking.
yeah,
And then they get a business license for that food truck and then they can do it.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
that
written
makes
under
sense for
permission,
sure for a
so
while.
it's-
Yeah. They had a food truck for a while before there was regulations on them, and then I
Yeah.
think now they
It's
have.
good. Nasca's one down here.
Yep, it's hardly
So-
ever open.
And the ice cream
Right.
place is good. We got all, of them.
So-
We're big food, especially food trucks coming from Austin.
We may get
Little
food
man
trucks
ice cream.
coming down the pipeline
Is it?
for us to
Yeah.
talk
Oh,
about.
wow. I didn't know
Is,
that.
I guess my short answer, but,
But
but we never had food trucks before, so there's probably
So
just some
that's
tweaks
Safeway.
to be made as we learn our lessons, right? So.
yeah, all of a sudden they just are here. It was like, there were none, and then there was one, and now there's 3. So it's fun though.
I heard the tacos and the breads were pretty good too, and the pastries.
They're just never open. But the taco place is open all the time.
Oh, they're so good. I go there all the time.
Really good, really
Right,
nice
are
too.
they open? I'm
They open
hungry.
till like 11 every day. I'm
Oh,
not even
gosh.
joking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're like always
Do
open.
they
They were open
Burritos there
yesterday in
too?
the storm. No, they did not have liquor.
And they have one in Georgetown too, and it's not.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, there's been some talk amongst brick and mortar businesses that are less excited about food trucks, so.
It goes so hand in hand with the bike culture though.
But we did limit it,
Yeah.
and when we did it, but we didn't, we let it be down there, but that was before the paid parking, so I
Right.
can see where that's been
Yeah,
questioned now.
and the idea was like, there's fewer restaurants down there, so it's less competition, you know, cause there's some pretty good restaurants down there, of course, but. You know, they're not really competing against a taco truck or I mean, everyone's competing against everyone, but. You know, it's different than like downtown Minor Street. You wouldn't want to stick a taco truck in the middle of Minor Street. Okay, so. let's see, I think that's everything I need from that, but this last one is, and I think that's it from me. Private paid parking lots.
This is a different one.
Which is it's parking related, so it all goes together. And I was gonna create like a spreadsheet. Basically, we have like 4 different scenarios for parking. So like right now, we require off-street parking. You know, Safeway has to provide 100-something spaces based on their square footage. Coffee shop has to do it. Anyone does who's coming. But what parking is not a by right use. Like we don't have a zone district that says you can just provide parking. Like that's not a business per town. But it's accessory. That said, we do not prohibit property owner from charging for those parking spaces. And this is common in lots of like Denver grocery stores and things like that. They say like, if you want to park at my business, you're paying $1 an hour, $2 an hour, or whatever. And maybe they give, if you're a patron of the business, they'll refund your parking, validate it, but you're paying for a private parking. Like our code doesn't state that you can't do it. And so I think the first question is, what's our thought on that topic? And the reason it's important and has come up is because like, Safeway is the good example because they have a ton of parking in it. And like, there's a lot of people who park there and don't go to Safeway, and they historically haven't done much about it, but they could say, hey, we're gonna stop this by making you pay for it. And there's nothing that says they couldn't just, even when they're closed, you could still go there and park and pay the fee and go downtown or whatever. So like, we can't, like there's one example that I mentioned in here, it's like, they have a business license, they were approved for a retail space. They're required to provide a certain number of parking spaces, they provided more than the minimum that they need. They don't care whether you go to their business or not. So it essentially functions as a public parking lot that's paid, even though they have a business license that's tied to a retail use. And so we're interested in your thoughts on that situation.
So they created enough spots for their business, didn't do the business, now they've changed it.
Well, they have the business.
They have the business, but only need 2 spots, but they have 10 spots, let's say, and now they want to charge for those.
Is there an example of, like, say, Safeway's a good example because there's so many, but because they don't care, I'm hesitant to say we need to charge people when Safeway's like, use our parking, we're good with it. Is there an example of somewhere that isn't okay with it?
Sure, so I would say like, no one is currently doing this.
Yeah.
But let's say Starbucks, let's say the grilled cheese shop in the
Yeah. Hardware store.
hardware store, like they're very close to the gondola and people are like, it's free.
Yeah.
And no one's monitoring it, so I'm just gonna park there. And they're like, well, I don't have enough space, I only have 8 spaces.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna put a gate up and you've gotta pull a ticket and then you come in and then at the end you pay $5 an hour
Mhm.
unless you show me a receipt that you bought a grilled cheese. Like that's I think the intent of someone doing it is to protect their parking from people who are not using their business.
Thanks, that's a better example. Safeway's such a big brand, I don't see them, but like local brands that are worried about parking and protecting their business, that makes most sense in my head.
Right.
But isn't it up to that property owner to put up signs that says you'll be towed at owner expense if you're not a patron of this business?
They could do
They
that.
could do that, but the other thing they could do is it could work for them and they could have designated spots for those patrons and charge them. So is the question, what would the city prefer to see?
Well, I think
Which
the
way it's
question
being
is,
done?
do we want to potentially address that second thing and make it so it's not allowed? For someone to charge for their required private parking,
Well,
off-street parking.
that goes a step farther because there's also places doing that are providing storage for campers and stuff. I mean, it's opening a big can of worms because then the comments would be, well, it's our property. We can park whatever we want there, but yet does our ordinance say that no, you can't store?
Well, I mean, their use would be storage, like their storage use. And so charging for storage is different than parking. I mean, another example of a business that is charging for parking is cable car. Like they are charging their guests to park. They're requiring that the only people parking there are their guests, but they're charging them. And in a different scenario where they said, we don't care if you're our guest, we just are gonna charge you. Like if they didn't want to enforce on that, like we can't force them to enforce it.
Right.
So then theoretically, like, they could have 20 people parking there who are just climbing the mountain bike trail and not
Right.
using the gondola, and they don't want that. But other businesses might not mind, and I mean, maybe it's not an issue, but I know in this one example, because these guys didn't really. Like, there's certain businesses where if you just started doing private paid parking, it would seem like that's the primary business, because your other business, here's a good example. Let's say, you know, that place for sale between Uplift Inn and Conrad's, it's been for sale for a while. Someone comes in and they say, I'm gonna knock all that down, I'm gonna build a Dutch Brothers coffee on the entire lot and surround it with 100 parking spaces. And I'm gonna say, hey, feel free to buy coffee from me, but I'm gonna charge you $1 an hour. And if you don't buy coffee, I don't care. Like, you can just park here. So like, is the business officially is the coffee shop, but clearly they're like, they have 100 parking spaces.
And they're making the money off of that parking space. So there's a whole extra, it's a
Right,
second,
the city's not making any money off of any of
it's
this.
another earned revenue source for the business itself.
But it's their private
But it's-
property.
Right, and
Yeah.
so,
Why did they even build a Dutch Brothers? Why,
No,
I mean,
So-
why not just
Well,
build,
That-
pave it
that
and
gets
have
to
a
the-
parking lot and
That
charge
gets
for
to
the
the
parking
second
lot?
question. You have to have a primary use
Yeah.
per code now.
Yeah.
And that primary use
Okay.
can't be parking.
Yeah.
So what someone could do, and what we're trying to see, should we address this, is establish a primary use that's pretty minor and
Like
then
a Dutch Brothers.
maximize your accessory use, which
Okay.
is parking. Later in this report, you know, we say like, someone comes in and says, I have a vacant lot, I just want to do a paid parking lot. Like, there's no primary use, I just want parking, it's all parking. The code's pretty clear, because it's not an allowed by right use, you have to get a conditional use permit for it. But in the example of the coffee shop guy, like, they establish their primary use, we require you to provide parking, we don't require you to provide a maximum amount of parking. So if I can fit 100 spaces, I can fit 100 spaces. And so maybe it's not an issue, like, because they're just providing more parking, and why do we care if they charge for it? But
And if they have to go through the process of the conditional use, I don't have a problem with that one as much as I do the Dutch Brothers one. I was lost there, like. But because that person would build that business and we would say, okay, you have to accommodate 8 spaces for your business, but yet he creates 25 spaces and then charges for those other 17 spaces.
right. And the code does allow you to, so let's say my business needs 5 spaces, but I only have room for 2. I can go to my adjacent property and say, hey, you have some extra spaces, can I lease these spaces from you?
Right,
And they're allowed to do that because they have excess parking.
okay.
So that's similar, but so like, then you said that's fine, the code says that's fine, you can lease from a
Mhm.
adjacent property if it's within 600 feet. What the code is not, what the code also then allows is the next step further of like, well, I have all these excess spaces, I'm not leasing them to my business next door, I'm just letting people use them however they want. And I'm getting paid a little bit for them, you know, using my land. Instead of someone who's buying coffee from me using my land.
That, you know,
it's a tough one.
it's a tough one because to me, that sounds okay. But when you use the example, well, let's use the example next door here. And you go by there in the summer, they're not rafting and there's a sign that they made and are charging for parking. How would that apply to something like that? And that's not even designated. Is that a right use? I mean, is that something that they're able to do? It's their building, their property.
Well, it's the same thing that the gondola is doing, right?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, but
That's why.
did they have to do a parking study? Did they have to do a travel thing? Because you got people turning in and out. Where didn't they have to do a parking study? I guess if you're trying to
Or
compare,
if they have
not
enough, like,
a
I
parking
mean,
plan.
that they would have to provide a parking plan saying, here's the X number of spaces that meet our parking space.
Maybe that's the
requirements.
key. If a business
And-
wants to do it, they have to provide a parking plan. Because then they still have to show that this is where they're gonna park those cars, but this is where their business still is accommodating and having enough parking spots for their business still. Then they have to be accountable by
I think it's too late for this conversation.
honoring their plan.
Well,
I mean, I'm just throwing that idea
Yeah.
out there because then I don't know how you still enforce it or anything,
Yeah,
but
I
at
think
least
it's-
the business has to monitor it themselves.
Well,
It's their parking plan.
The Argo's already doing it, right? They're already charging for parking.
but and. They're
For the
required,
spaces they were required to have for their business, they're charging for those spaces.
right,
Right.
And so we've already set precedent with that in a way, right? If
But they
we're-
had to have a plan.
But
For-
like
for our
the
current-
grilled cheese, if they have 3 spots that they're required to have to run their business,
yeah,
they
yeah.
could charge.
Every single private business who has off-street parking in town, per our
Could charge.
code now, per legal planning interpretations, could charge for those spaces. They're not required to provide free parking for their business, they're just required to provide parking. Off-street parking.
Yeah,
Huh, that's interesting.
I don't know honestly the extent to where we could go with this.
Yeah.
Because it feels like if you say you can't charge people to park, that feels almost like a taking, like
Yeah.
you know? But also if you're saying, we're not gonna let you have this Dutch Brothers with 100 parking spots because you don't need 100 parking spots. I don't know what the health, safety, or welfare justification for telling them they can't use their property in that way is.
Didn't, this is maybe a question for you, didn't Fort Collins create parking maximums?
That I think they did, yeah, possibly. I can't remember because that was back when I looked at fee and lieu.
And here's my other idea that maybe is worth feedback is like, could it be tied to like what's the primary uses based on revenue tied to that use? Like in an example where you have 100 paid parking spaces in a small coffee shop, like and you barely open the coffee shop, you're probably making more money off of parking. So wouldn't parking then be the principal use over the coffee shop?
Yeah,
Like, could we address it that?
I think that's a possible way, but you would just have to make it so that you can't have parking as a principal use, which I guess
Well,
we don't really say one way or another right now.
We also, I mean, there's 2 things that are very different. Is one, we have the issue of parking. So I feel like it kind of feels silly for us to not allow the people to create
Yeah,
parking.
I think it would be
On
great.
the other hand, I feel like the gondola is a new thing and there's gonna be coming a lot of people. And we already have seen bikers trying to park whatever else where they don't have to pay. So if they're gonna be taking parkings from restaurants or businesses without going and, buying stuff there, then also I think it's a detriment as well. So
to have the
maybe.
business do paid parking or to not have the business.
Well, if they're gonna take parking spots from the businesses just because they can go ride and don't pay there.
Like they're
so-
just sneaking on.
Exactly.
Trespassing by not using the business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which it can happen
Which
because
is
nobody's
happening.
checking, right? Nobody's checking the
Well, I
lights, nobody's
think
checking the
that-
parking.
And so then it's at least some extra earned income for the business as they're not getting the people in the door, right? And so, again, I think if we have brand new companies already doing it, then I don't know.
I
know
don't think
something
there's
that-
any problem with if you own that property down there.
Yeah.
And you want to put a Dutch Brothers there and then have parking. That's good business sense, but it's also one of those, like you were saying, it lets maybe the bikers or the people that are walkers and going hiking, they're gonna park there. It's simple and easy and relieve parking up here for the restaurants and businesses. So it's not a bad thing by any means. I mean,
At the same time, then we're having, I'm just being devil's advocate here, but at the same time, we're adding more parking everywhere else. And then we made room for this freaking garage parking and then nobody's putting money towards that one. So we never will build it because there's other people making money off parking somewhere else.
yeah, but it's
So it's kind
kind
of like a whole,
Yeah, I mean, Guy assistant city administrator has kind of reflected that concern of like, right now, we are at a parking deficit for sure. But there will come a time in the future where theoretically, where we have enough parking and now we're competing against private business for those parking dollars and we can't make our parking improvements because that guy is undercutting us.
And our whole town is full of parking spots
Right,
instead of
and that's where I think
other things.
Yeah,
that's,
we have space for parking in the future.
and I do think like that's where, that's the other side of this is like, if you just want to do a parking lot and that's it.
Mhm.
Like the way it's written now is you have to get a conditional use.
And it could be for 5 years,
Right, or 10 years or
so a
for
person
whatever,
wants to
like,
develop their property.
Right,
like the concern is like, we don't want it to all just be parking everywhere. And it's like Disneyland with just one little destination surrounded by a sea of asphalt. But if you have your actual business and you just create extra parking, like the concern with just having parking is it's so easy to make money. Like, yeah, you could make more money if you built a nice hotel or a coffee shop or something, but if you could just build a parking on its own,
Mhm.
you're making money, you're not doing anything to make that money. That's why there's a bunch of like lots in downtown Denver, even though they could probably make a bunch of money selling it to a housing developer or something. So I mean, maybe that's the unintended consequence of letting everyone keep their existing business and build a sea of parking, as they'll never want to make it something else.
not as easy to make money.
I mean, we're not talking that many places.
Right, the number of places that can actually do this is relatively small also. That's true, you know, like residences can't establish paid parking at their
Right.
house if they have extra parking. It's just.
It's like going to a Bronco game, hey, park in my driveway, you hand the guy $30 and you park, that's how we do it.
People probably could do
It's
that here,
great.
but it's not like.
You park in mine for free if you want.
Oh, are you right by there?
Yeah.
Oh, we're always looking for a place to park.
If you want.
We did one of the elementary schools, and it goes to the kids at the school, which is cool.
Well, okay. Well, I mean, it sounds like the way the code's written now maybe is fine. That allows this.
I mean, I feel like this summer we're gonna learn some more stuff, you know, with the gondola.
Yeah, there's lots of going on.
But it is precedent setting, like you guys are saying, that you're around one business, do it, and then you're gonna turn around. Right now, anybody can do it, right?
Yeah.
Where we're at.
And if you say no, that it impacts,
Well, you know, I mean, you'd be adopting an ordinance with general applicability throughout the city.
Yeah.
So if someone got in before that ordinance was enacted, then they got lucky.
yeah.
I mean,
These
right,
New ones.
Yeah.
right now, it's, you could take your business and mark off 8 spots and you're running your business, you look out the window and guys are pulling up, you walk up and say, hey, it's $10 to park here. And then when they pull out, the next guy pulls in, hey, you walk up and, I mean, it's easy on your own property to monitor it.
Right.
And nothing stops that right now, which
It's fun.
is fine. That's what, yeah,
Um,
I'm one that would do it that way.
that brings me to a question, like, when are those guys 2 blocks from here gonna stop doing parking and build that hotel that we're gonna build
That's not good.
in Colorado?
The hotel
That's one of the things.
has expired.
Oh,
The approval, it's been over 2 years, it's been 2.5 years.
oh, wow.
Has it already?
Nice.
And
So they're gonna stay as a parking now?
Well, they have a
They have a
business
business.
license for a retail gift shop that require, and upstairs they have a house, you know, Safe Built has approved all of the space. Commercially.
So they're the
used
ones, the
residential.
first ones charging for parking.
And they are required to have 5 or 6 parking spaces. They said, we have space to meet the code and build 18 or something, and we're just gonna charge for those 18.
Mhm.
And we have our business, they have a website with all their art on the website, like it's a legitimate business, they don't open all that often, it's. Which, you know, makes it maybe look suspicious, these sorts of things, that's why it has been controversial, I suppose, but.
Do they have their own private charging or are they with the city?
Yeah, they're private, they contracted with the same vendor, but it's a completely different system, the city has nothing to do with it, we don't make any money off of it. we could go into business with someone and lease spaces from a private business, this if you wanted to, but so far we've not done that.
Well, that makes that block look really out of character.
Well, that whole block is also zoned commercial,
Okay.
but like, that's the other thing about some of these places is we have a lot of commercially zoned areas around the city that have houses on them. And so someone wants to come in and convert their residential home into a commercial business and go through the safe build process to convert that. Then they're a commercial business. And it just happens that they have several residential homes next to them. And
But they
that's-
would have to have parking.
Right.
Hmm.
So that's one of the other things we're doing is like, there's a lot of, I'd say there's 60-ish homes in the city that are commercially zoned. Maybe not 20, but there's at least several of them. 40 or 50, pretty much everything between the visitor center and here.
Yeah. Are you getting a lot of parking complaints from the east side now? Because the trails are back open, or is it,
Not currently, like I've
so
not
this is
really,
anticipation of what is to come?
yeah, and I'm getting a lot of interest from businesses about establishing parking. So that's why I've kind of wanted to talk it through tonight, because that Dutch Brothers example has been talked to me about, like in very hypothetical terms.
And a Dutch Brothers?
No,
Oh,
I took some artistic license,
okay.
but people have been asking questions about like what might be possible.
No, it
It's
just
all right.
sounded funny when he said it, so that's why. I
Obsessed
keep-
with it.
It's,
It was a good
recognizable
example to
coffee.
use.
Yeah, it is.
It's good.
I've never been actually.
Yeah, me neither.
It's very sugary.
Yeah.
What is?
All right, well, that is
So
great.
did we help you any here? Because I don't think
So-
we got any direction.
No, I mean,
Did you? Okay.
staying the course is direction
Okay.
that we need, you know, like no change is still great direction because.
Yeah, I
that's-
mean, to me, there's something, but I don't think we're.
Well,
What?
and we can keep thinking about it
Yeah.
and like if things become issues and it keeps coming up, then we can address it and we've already broken the seal on the conversation, so that's.
And also learn from what other places do.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah, I definitely don't wanna see like a sea of parking everywhere, but I mean, like that is the number one complaint we get from residents and business owners and visitors is there's not enough parking. So it kind of creates this weird catch-22. And then I hear from people, they don't want a parking structure and other people, it's like, it's gonna block the historic district, we hate this, and others are like, we want it, you know, it's. It's a
But then
losing battle.
you take like Safeway, yeah, but they've never allowed people really to park there. That's up to them to monitor their own business.
Right.
But we I think there's somewhere in the ordinance that you can't park cars there with for sale signs and stuff like that. And maybe there's no overnight parking, because you never see overnight parking there. So because that's the last thing you want too, is Safeway to all be lined up on the front row with these
Yeah.
cars with for sale signs and stuff on it.
I would guess that would, cause them to change their tune on people parking there who are not patrons. But I mean, last summer when the park first opened, we saw a bunch of bike racks in there.
Yeah,
Why not?
but that's kind of up to Safeway to
Yeah.
monitor their own parking lot.
Right.
Yeah. Which first come, first serve?
I have a headache from this conversation.
Okay, is that it? Or
Ended with
did
the
we
hardest
finish?
one. Because later.
Unless you wanna keep talking about anything, that's it for me.
No, all this took longer than I thought it would.
We
yeah.
definitely took
It's
longer.
okay, but
Sorry.
we had a meeting.
You jinxed it.
I know, it's been a while. What's going on with Crossing?
Okay, well, I will, shut this down and the work session is over.
Yeah.
All right, thanks Jefferson.